Dennison and with peaceoptions.com. And today we're going to talk about the war drums that are beating for Syria and North Korea, Russia, and perhaps even China. And this is getting out of hand. But I'm talking to you today because this is directed to those people who have an inner urge to do something about the conditions in their world. That there's something that something within them is calling you to address what you see that's stealing your peace. Excuse me, I'm going to change that. Turn off the fan here. Since I know that's going to annoy all of you on Periscope, I can see that turning in the background. It should be stopping turning in a moment here. Anyway, this whole situation is bothering me, and I'm see if I can sort of think it through with you, because what I've been seeing this for about the last year during the election season, with particularly with Hillary Clinton, when she started beating the drums for war with Russia, even before the breach of the DNC's computers. But to me, in the past, it was always the Republicans that were calling for war, and now it's become the Democrats. And what happened? I mean, back when I was growing up, the Democrats absorbed they had the party of peace. They had all of the again, where all the progressives and liberals are now, but liberals in those days wanted peace. They didn't want war. They didn't want to stop free speech or shout other people down. If anything, they were trying to just make love and make it so everybody could get along together. And somehow or other, we lost our way with that over the years. But there are a lot of us that are seeing what's going on, and we can't sit silently by anymore. Something about this whole situation is making it so that we have to speak up and do something about it. Even myself, peace options. I mean, over the years we've been about various aspects of peace, about knowing yourself, about finding your peace, going your own way. We've been trying to lay a foundation upon which people could build a better world. But the situation over this last year has gotten so much that it's even dragged me into it. And I was doing my best to try to stay neutral over the years. And unfortunately, I can't stay neutral on the side anymore. I can't sit on the sideline. But the side that I'm rooting for isn't really in the game. And that's part of the problem. Because there's nobody speaking for peace. There's nobody speaking for the kind of world that we want to live in, or we're trying to get to. Instead, all we're doing is talking about the problems of today. And most of the solutions that we're bringing up for the problems of today are just going to exacerbate those problems and make them worse in the future. And that's our fault, because we as a people have not stood up for peace. And that's because within each of us, there is this war going on, there's two sides. We'll call it good or bad. It's not necessarily good and it's not necessarily bad. It's just that we take both sides of a lot of these issues at one time or another within our lives, and sometimes within us, because many of us got upset after the 9/11 attacks. We were so incensed by it that many of our countrymen allowed Bush and the Congress allowed Congress to permit Bush to go to war in Iraq and Afghanistan, and we've been goaded into giving our support to war way too many times in the past. And I say goaded into it because I don't think going to war, first of all, going to war is not something you take lightly. And the system that we live under provides that going to war should be done by an act of Congress under a declaration of war. But our Congress doesn't have the guts for that. And the problems that we have never reached the point that we cry for our Congress to have our president go to war. Instead, we've allowed our system to devolve where our president can go off and basically do pretty much whatever he wants, so long as he comes and tells Congress about it at some point early in the job and gets their permission to keep going. Technically, that's supposed to be under the War Powers Act, but they're not even asking for consent under the War Powers Act, because the presidents successively since then have not acknowledged that war powers even limits their power. So that there's this congressional game going on between this constitutional game going on between Democrats and Republicans. I'm sorry, it is between the Congress and the executive branch over the war powers, or over when we can go to war. And the reason I bring this up about when we can go to war is yesterday, Donald Trump ordered 2 destroyers to fire 59 Tomahawk cruise missiles into the Shayat Air Force Base in southeastern Syria. Let that sink in for a moment. Now, we've been over in Syria fighting with and supplying the rebels against Assad. But now this is the first intentional action that we have taken against the Assad government itself. Okay. This was supposedly being done in response to a sarin gas attack that was committed on the citizens of Syria, either during or following a bombing by Syrian Air Force against the rebels in I'm not sure which city that was that the attack occurred in. But the sarin gas, the question is whether the sarin gas was dropped by the Syrian government, by Assad himself on his own people, or whether it was already on the ground or put there to go off by some other forces, either rebel forces or others who want to foment conflict in the area. And I won't get into naming any names of that. We can do another show on that another time. But I woke up this morning to cheers from mainstream media and the right-wing war hawks of John McCain and Lindsey, I want to say Lindsey Buckingham. I know it's not Lindsey Buckingham. It'd be much easier to listen to if it were Lindsey Graham. And here they're praising Trump for going to war, for bombing Syria, for an act of war that's very nearly provoked the Russians into a response against us, because there were Russians on that base. Now, our CIA, or our intelligence services, have apparently convinced Donald Trump that the sarin gas had been stored on that Air Force base, Syrian Air Force base, and loaded into bombs, and then taken to and dropped on Tuesday. I'm not so sure. And I tell you, I'm not so sure because of the problems that we have had over the last several months with the credibility of the media, with all the attacks to try to undermine Trump, and how all this is emanating from what has become a very corrupt and overreaching intelligence service, and elements of the deep state within them that are leaking certain information out to try to subvert the Trump presidency. I'm not here to advocate or bash Trump. This is not what we're talking about today. Right now, we're talking about the fact that so many people want war. The only ones I see speaking out against it are others like me that supported Trump on the belief that he was going to turn away from the call for war with Russia that Hillary Clinton was calling for. Because if you'll recall, during the election, it was almost assured that we were going to war. That was the choice. You wanted war, you've elected Hillary. If you didn't want war, you took your chances with Trump. Now, there's a lot of other stuff going on there that influenced a lot of us as well on both sides. But that was one major issue for many of us. And for me, being at Peace Options, the issue of war has always been a big one. We shouldn't be fighting. And it's not just because of peace itself. War is not a good instrument of foreign policy in order to create peace unless you absolutely vanquish your foe. Because you can't reach a stalemate and leave your foe in existence and still expect to not have to deal with the residual bad feelings and injustices that they may have had against you during the battle that beat them. So war is a last resort, and it's terrible upon everybody, and most of all upon the civilians, because what has happened with war now that we're seeing with these jihadists in the Middle East is that they are embedding themselves into hospitals and apartment buildings and office buildings and other places where lots and lots of civilians are around them, so that they know that if they're attacked, someone comes after them, they're going to have to deal with the PR nightmare of the public looking at hundreds or thousands of dead bodies caused by efforts to fight them. Now that's bad enough. But the fact that we keep going in and doing it, and we keep having all these so-called collateral damages of innocents being killed, has got to stop. When do we make an effort to change? But when do we try something different? But we can't. We're in the middle of an empire. We're fighting to hold on to our empire and to hold off the rising empire of the Chinese in the East. When all of us, and by the way, the last empires battling were between the United States and Russia, and they were in a stalemate until Russia lost the economic side of the battle. I don't think that's going to happen with the Chinese. If anything, it might be us losing that economic side of the battle due to our debt, but China's got just as much debt as we do, so it's not going to be an easy situation either way. But everywhere I turn, I hear people talking about war. China has talked about the fact that they think that a war with the United States over the next 2 or 3 or 4 years is inevitable, sometime during Trump's first term, probably over the South China Sea, although it could be dragged into North Korea or Taiwan. I mean, we've got all 3 of those flashpoints there, and not to mention all the other stuff that's going on that China's into, which, by the way, Xi Jinping is meeting with Trump right now in Mar-a-Lago, just down the road here. I'm in Coral Springs, Florida. Beautiful sunny day today, and Trump is meeting with the Chinese premier and his team in West Palm Beach, about 45 minutes up the road. No way I'd ever go near there. The traffic I hear is so bad, and then they had an accident on the turnpike, and so that closed the 2 main thoroughfares running north to south through Palm Beach County this morning, and it was just a mess from what I heard on the news. So I'm happy that I went the other way this morning. But now I'm back to talk with you and continue our conversation. So what we've had, I'm bouncing all over the place. I'm sorry. This week started with Susan Rice. And Susan Rice was the national security advisor for Obama, and before that, I believe she was his UN ambassador. Susan Rice, if you recall, tried to do the Hillary, saves Hillary's butt on the Benghazi fiasco by claiming that the attacks happened because of some video that apparently had been broadcast and seen in the area that day, as if they could prove it. But anyway, continuing on, Susan Rice, it turns out, unmasked names of Trump and other of his associates involved in his campaign on at least 12 occasions, and prepared or had compiled reports supposedly for Obama with this information on matters which were not related to Russia, which were not related to any sort of criminal wrongdoing by Trump or any of his people. They called it incidental surveillance. Now, we don't have the details of how it came out, but we do know that it somehow was brought to her attention, and she ordered the unmasking. Now, what happened later after it was unmasked, the classification was reduced so those reports could be seen by more and more people. And then, lo and behold, after Obama leaves, all those reports start getting leaked, or many of those aspects start getting leaked to the press. And this is what we've been having in this deep drip, 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 drip of the last few months, as this deep state and whoever they are working with on the outside are working in conjunction with the lapdog mainstream media to feed this information out to control our narrative and bring down Trump. So with that perspective, now we have a situation where there is Syria, where we had the Serin gas attack that happened right after bombing. But there were suspicious circumstances surrounding the attack and the aftermath that make many people question as to whether it was the Syrian government at all behind the attacks. And that is a really perilous place to be as a citizen of the United States, and hopefully of what we want a new world to be. To question the veracity of our own intelligence services that are telling President Trump that these gas attacks were definitely done by the Syrian government, enough to convince him to drop missiles on that base. 59 of them. 59 missiles from 2 destroyers. What? So whatever they told him must have been awfully convincing, because he had Nikki Haley go the next day to the UN Security Council and accuse Syria and Russia of malfeasance, and Syria of cheating and having committed those attacks, and then the next day Trump bombs them. Yet it had to be based upon these intelligence services that had been feeding the same information on Trump, that had been trying to get rid of him. And so the question is, are they feeding him information to lead him into war, like happened with Bush, that they deny happened with Bush, but in fact it did, that there was bad information that somehow got to Bush that led him to go into a war, thinking there were weapons of mass destruction, which there were not. And now they're doing it again. I just don't understand it. Trump went in there specifically not to get dragged into that fight. He talked about pulling out of the Middle East and not fighting these wars. And now he's dragging us in again. Granted, his method of fighting is different than what was done through Bush and Obama. He's not sending hundreds of thousands of troops to go in and do a massive ground attack with the full army and and Air Force support. Instead, he's sending commando teams and small assault teams of small battalions of Marines into Syria and to Iraq to do the job for us. So basically, he's sending small groups in to go train the local fighters and direct the artillery and other shell and Air Force coming in for the bombings, the support. So, you know, is it a better strategy? I don't know. I don't think so. It doesn't. It's not. Hasn't brought peace yet. Doesn't brought peace yet. It's better than the other one we had. If you got to fight, it's better to fight effectively, but it's not. It's not right, man. Why are we going to war all the time? We are in a continual state of war. Isn't it time that we stood up and said enough is enough? But I didn't hear that from anybody during the elections. I know a lot of us felt that way. I heard it from Jill Stein. I heard it from Gary Johnson. But I sure didn't hear it from either Trump or Hillary. Now, Trump, to be honest, Trump's talk about peace was peace with Russia, so that we could fight ISIS. Well, I think he's kind of burned that bridge now that he's gone back. He's gone after Syria now. Yet there seems to be this continual push to get us in war. It's as if the effort to connect Trump to Russia has been used to drive him closer toward war with Russia by making him pull back from his efforts and desire to have that peace. He's now put that off because of all the pressure he's getting from the media and the left, that he's not following through on his promise to try to change our relationship with Russia. If we changed our relationship with Russia already, or started that, maybe we would be in a different position right now to deal with Syria. So this is part of what I see is happening, is that this deep state and whoever's controlling them is pushing us toward war. They've been sounding the drum beats for months, and mainstream media is going along with it, and their talking heads are calling for it and calling for us to be strong and to stand up to Russia. Now, they're not so strong, calling us to be so strong and to stand up to China. Though China is what Trump is hopefully standing up to and for today, because there's so much we've got to deal with China about. And we have to figure out how we're going to change that relationship so it can be more conducive to peace and getting along together. But between their economic policies and their form of government, I'm speaking specifically with regard to the lack of freedoms of their citizens, the way they're treating the Tibetans and the Uyghurs, and their threats against Taiwan and their building of islands in the South China Sea. There's a lot we've got to deal with China on. And it very well may mean that there is no way to resolve this without at some point fighting, either directly or through surrogates. I would hope we would learn from the folly of the previous 1,000 years, but obviously we're not. We're continuing to fight the same fights over and over and over again. We haven't learned from history because we haven't learned how to change ourselves and to find those things within us that support the good, instead of falling back on those other parts that that want to fight, that want to engage in the conflict, to assert our will and to be right and to protect ourselves and our way of life. And all those things are important, but it's how we go about them that's going to be the determining factor for those of us that are trying to work to build something better. If you stayed with me this long, you probably are one of these people that is what I call an awakening server, someone who is awakening the possibilities of what you and your world can be and are being called to do something about it, whether it's adding your voice, whether using your money, your time, your services, embarking upon a mission to make a difference, or just giving a smile to somebody who's in pain. Whatever it is, if you're hearing this call and you're acting upon it, then you're part of this wave of consciousness that's sweeping across our land. And when you see these things happening on the news, it's important to not just shake your head and give up, but to go back and connect with that part of yourself that says, I know this is not the way I want my world to be. Show me what I can do with it that is within my power to start the ball rolling to change it. Awakening comes with a heavy price, because when you are aware of situations in your world that are stealing your peace, you're not going to find any peace unless you do something about them. So either you sacrifice your peace and go jump into the battle on one side or another and fight the good fight, or you say, I've got to go find my peace within that battle, or within the chaos that is resulting from it. So you have to find your way through there in a way that's going to allow you to be at peace so that you can begin to create something better for everybody. But if you can't find your own peace first, odds are good that you're going to carry the seeds of the problems of today into the future you want to create. And I see that we have some people talking down here, but I'm sorry, my eyes aren't good enough to see my cell phone at the distance it's at. But please feel free to add your comments here. I'll try to go back and catch them later. But again, pay attention to what is going on in your news. But mostly pay attention to where that fits within how you see yourself and how you want your world to be. Because if you can't reconcile what is with what you want to be, then you got to do something about it. You can't just sit back on your ass and wait, because it's not going to happen. You want a better world, work for it. Now, I know some of you have been out there marching against President Trump and have been jumping up and speaking out against many of the policies and practices that he's been putting into place these last 3 months. I admire your zeal, and I support the exercise of your speech. But hopefully it is your speech you are exercising, and you're not just going out there to support some slogans that somebody else is chanting in the background and you just happen to be there because it's a good time. But I certainly don't support any efforts by those who are trying to shout down or shut up those that they don't agree with. There is no place in my world, the world that I'm trying to create, for suppression of free speech. Every person has come into this world as a soul, endowed with the same rights, the same powers, and we all have the right to get the experiences we came for. And to the extent that we are creating those experiences consciously, we have the right to go about doing it. That's what freedom is all about. Unfortunately, the exercise of that freedom too often comes where we are stepping on the toes of somebody else, or we are suppressing or oppressing them, trying to make them into what we need them to be so we can do what we want. That's not the way it's going to be. It can be if you want a world that allows you to be the expression that you came to be. Instead, we all have to assume the responsibility that comes with it. The responsibility not only for our own actions and how they affect other people and the world around us, of course, because of how we pollute and do the other things to our environment. But we are also responsible for the things that are done in our name and the governments that rule us and the systems that we put in place within those governments, underneath or above those governments that allow our society to function. When you see wrong being done by them, it's your duty to speak up, to find a way to be heard and to make a difference. Maybe your calling is not to speak out, but it's to go actually work on some problem that's caused by that, or something totally unrelated, such as poverty or oh God, there's so many problems I don't even want to start going through them. All I know is we can't keep going on the way that we're going. If we keep going on this way, we're going to destroy ourselves. I don't hold myself out as to be anything special. I'm just a guy trying to find his way in this crazy world, just like you are. Or you probably not, may not be a guy, but you have, and I have, something that we're here for. And we can't allow what they're doing to interfere and destroy our world so that we can't do what we came to do. Yes, I saw that about the pus wound. Yes, he did let it fester. Boy, it sure has festered. See, this, by the way, this is my first Periscope, so I'm still getting the hang of it. And I thank you all for bearing with me today. I've done a few more YouTubes you can find for us over on our Peace Options channel. But I'm doing my Periscopes under my own account. So hopefully it's actually going across to you, since I'm totally I'm totally in the woods on how to do this stuff. Guys, I don't know what to tell you. All I know is we got to do something about it. I'm trying to do what I can to awaken and call to action those who have something to add to the battle. I don't think we have to oppose anyone. What we have to do is we have to stand up for the things that we believe in. And we have to work toward building the kind of world that we want to live in. And as we do, to turn away from those aspects of the old one that are not going to get us there. You don't need me to tell you what they are. I'm happy to give you my opinion, but I don't think you need it. I think you've got more than enough to build, to rely on, because it's what's in here that counts. And what's in here, your mind and your heart have to work together. And when one gets out of balance, things go haywire. And right now, our world is out of balance. We're all caught up in our own stuff. And we can't see or consider what other people have to say, because it threatens our self-image. It threatens our lifestyle. It threatens what we perceive our interests to be. Oh yes, it's got a comment here about people forgetting about the annexation of Crimea by Russia. Yes, as a matter of fact, that was that's a really complicated situation, and I'm not sure that you'll like what I have to say about this, because from what I have heard, our NATO allies, particularly the German secret intelligence services, along with our CIA, undertook a soft coup like they have been attempting with Trump here in the Ukraine. And there was that coup that took place a couple years before the Crimea annexation. So what it was there was a Ukraine for which Crimea was part of Ukraine, that we came in and undermined them and got them to turn away so that we could bring them into NATO and have somebody else on the Russian fronts, because we're trying to encircle Russia and China. But then Russia, who had at least for what, the last 75 years, Ukraine is part of the country, but Crimea had always been part of Russia. They went in to take Russia back, and they used it as to protect the justification to protect their citizens. So we have a very complex situation there a very complex situation, and I hope you guys can see me because my phone has just turned sideways. Let's see if that works. I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, guys, I'm running out of stuff to say because I'm going to get worked up here and get to a point where I just start going, how would you say, getting worked up. Because this is enough to piss you off thinking about what's going on in the world. I wish you a peaceful and happy week, and please go out and do something to change your world. And if you can, call the White House, tell them to back off and not pursue war with Syria. We got enough things to deal with here. We don't need to go fight over there. Anyway, John Dennison signing off for peaceoptions.com. Take care. God bless. And have a great weekend. Bye-bye.